Taking pictures is great. I mean, one of the biggest social media platforms in the world is based off of that premise. Not all photos are the cute and quirky mirror selfie though. Number 5 on this list is the Rothschild Surrealist Ball. The Rothschild family is one of the most rich and powerful on the entire planet. Their wealth and influence knows absolutely no bounds. Guy Gonley says the elaborate masks, robes, and decorations on display at the 1972 Rothschild Surrealist Ball are unsettling enough on their own even before you consider the people behind it. Wild conspiracy theories have swirled around the Rothschilds for centuries, and believers claiming that this German banking family does everything from control the world's wealth to instigate wars for their own gain. Whether or not any such rumors are true, Baroness Marie-Helene de Rothschild's Surrealist Ball at Chateau de Fary in France has only stoked outsiders' imaginations about what goes on behind closed doors at parties attended by the rich, powerful, and famous. In this case, attendees included Salvador Dali and Audrey Hepburn, while dessert was a life-sized naked woman made of sugar. So even though nothing went down here with this photo, that doesn't mean that something didn't go down. Let me explain. This family's secrets are tightly guarded, so if something did happen at this ball, we wouldn't have known about it. The ongoings of this family and where their true interests lie are really only known by the family itself. This is why this image is so scary, because for once we might have actually seen the family for what it truly is. A group of people wearing masks to blend in, hiding their true identities from the public. Now, I don't want to say that they are definitely up to something, because we truly have no idea, but we also don't know that they definitely aren't up to something either. Number 4 on this list is the Stanford Prison Experiment. This is right up there as being one of the worst psychological experiments ever, and the photo here really shows that. We have a dude with a bag over his head and his handcuffs on. Not super cool. Guy Gonley says the Stanford Prison Experiment commenced on August 14, 1971, after university psychology professor Philip Zimbardo divided student volunteers into 2 groups comprised of 11 guards and 10 prisoners in order to see how they would behave on their own inside a fabricated prison. The goal was to assess how quickly and intensely even educated and intelligent people can turn cruel and sadistic under the right conditions, and find out once and for all whether humans are inherently good or evil. In just 6 days before the experiment had to be called off, the guards had repeatedly abused and humiliated the prisoners by spraying them with fire extinguishers and forcing them to clean toilet bowls with their bare hands. The study and the creepiest photos left behind provide a chilling look at what humans are capable of doing. Apparently these people who were the prisoners, they had some serious long-term trauma. I mean, I would have too if for 6 straight days I was beaten, humiliated, had to do horrible tasks, and then had a bag thrown over my head whenever I was transported. Like, they literally tortured these people for 6 days straight. That's why this image is so scary. We can't even see the face of the person who's there, but imagine what's going on through their head right now. Imagine how scared that one prisoner is. 5486. That's all they were. For 6 days, all they were was a number, and all humanity was stripped from them. Thank goodness it only lasted 6 days and was stopped before going any further. Number 3 on this list is Children for Sale. This is a horrible image. It's scary, it's dark, and if you grew up in a good healthy family, then it should make you appreciate them that much more. Guy Gonley says this haunting photo from 1948 reveals just how much poverty can destroy a family. Mr. and Mrs. Ray Chalefaux were facing eviction from their Chicago apartment at the time and desperately needed money. So the unemployed coal truck driver and his wife opted to sell their kids. Though members of the Chalefaux family have claimed that the mother was paid to stage the image, the children in fact were sold to different homes within 2 years. Worse yet, the children, Lana, Ray, Milton, and Sue Ellen, were known to have been terribly abused by their new families thereafter. Yeah, this is something that actually happened, guys. This family sold their kids off to survive. I can't even possibly imagine that. How terrible that was for those poor children. I also don't care how poor you are or how down on your luck you may be. Selling your children should not be an option that you turn to ever. These parents did just that, and even though it may have helped them in the short run, I imagine that the guilt they felt afterwards, I mean, that must have been brutal. Number 2 on this list is the lady in the lift. Whenever you step into an elevator, it feels as if you've stepped into a portal of some kind. If you really think about it, it kind of is a portal, considering you start on one floor and then finish on a different one. Now, obviously there isn't anything magical about said elevators, and this portal of sorts is really just a mechanical innovation that takes you up and down tall buildings. That being said, this non-paranormal portal definition might not apply to the elevator in this photo. As we can see, there are a few people hanging out and chatting by the elevators. This was a picture captured by a doctor in a hospital in Bolivia. The elevator in the right of the image decided to open all by itself though. The group didn't think anything of it at the time, but when they looked back, noticed something fairly unsettling. The apparition of a woman is clearly standing in the elevator, staring right at them. No one knows who this woman is, but it's clear that she's either a ghost or a demon. Elevators have always seemed to have a connection to ghostly apparitions for whatever reason. Maybe it's because they do give off the sensation of being a portal, but there are a lot of stories connected to elevators and hauntings. This photo actually reminds me a lot of a haunted place in Austria. A young girl was at a university residence during Christmas. She was pretty much the only one who stayed there and didn't go home for the holidays. While she was there by herself, she accidentally stepped into the elevator shaft and fell to her death. Now she's set to haunt that elevator and torment those who step inside. Maybe this photo is of a similar story, but just at the hospital. It's impossible to say for sure, but either way guys, I'd be taking the stairs. And finally, number 1 on this list is the little boy. This photo is extremely scary and just flat out disturbing. BuzzFeed writes, "The Reddit user who posted this image was deeply skeptical that there was anything paranormal going on, although they couldn't deny there is something chilling about the figure of a little boy staring out from the ruins of an old school. I grew up in a small rural town in between mountains. A couple years ago they were tearing down an old elementary school. A guy my mom knew went in and took pics with his cell phone. When he uploaded them, this was one of the pics. I don't believe in stuff like this at all. I just really don't know how to explain it since it was a cell phone pic, and I'm pretty sure that no one in my podunk hometown knows how to make fake pics. So maybe he doesn't know how, but I know how to explain it. You're in the ruins of an old school, and those ruins are haunted by the demon of a young boy. Sometimes the simplest answers are the right ones, and this to me looks like an example of that. This little dude 100% looks possessed, and you can't even really make out his legs. Nor can you actually see his arms either for that matter. Kind of difficult to make up a logical explanation for a kid with no arms and no legs floating in the middle of an abandoned school. Also, side note, but can you imagine being the one to take this picture? Like you turn a corner and you see that dude and your first thought is, I'm gonna pull out my phone and take a picture of this kid. Like if that's me, I am straight up running out of that thing and we're burning that building hot.
Number 5. The final photo of Nicholas Mavoli. Nicholas Lawrence Mavoli III was a man of many different talents. He worked as a prop technician on such well-known television series as Chappelle's Show and Gossip Girl. He was also a writer and actor for the Rising Sun Performance Company, and even managed to play the leading role in a 2004 independent film called Exist. In addition to his showbiz endeavors, Nicholas was also an accomplished freediver. He began diving competitively in 2012 and managed to win 3rd place in the Caribbean Cup and winning titles twice at the Deja Blue competition. While competing at the Caribbean Cup, he set a new American record by diving 100 meters in the constant weight category. He even was able to win 3rd place in the constant weight without fins category at the Freediving World Championship in Greece in 2012. Suffice to say, he was very good at what he did. 10 days after his 3rd place win, he attempted to get to the depth of 96 meters in the free immersion category, but suffered an upper respiratory squeeze due to the differences in pressure and had to turn back after 80 meters. Rather than taking it easy after that, 2 days later he tried to dive 72 meters on a single breath. Witnesses say that once he reached 68 meters, he began to turn back, but almost immediately changed his mind and continued down. After being underwater for 3 minutes and 38 seconds, he returned to the surface and this photo was taken. Without the context, the photo looks almost comical, with Mavoli's wide eyes and perturbed expression, but with context, you see that he is realizing that something is very wrong. Seconds after this photo was taken, he fell backwards into the water, losing consciousness. The safety divers and the event physician tried to revive him for 90 minutes before he was taken to the hospital and died of pulmonary edema. He had set out that day to set records and inadvertently did, becoming becoming the first diver to die in an international free diving competition. But why should you not Google this photo? Well, Google keeps track of what you search in order to give you targeted ads, and if you search for this picture, you may begin to get advertisements for diving equipment, which could result in you taking up a dangerous hobby. So perhaps you should avoid Googling it for your own safety. Number 4. The Cloud of Ash. Robert Langsberg was a passionate photographer who showed a dedication to his craft that most people will never come close to. On May 17th, 1980, he was camped near Mount St. Helen, an active volcano that was set to erupt. Although the scientists studying the Mount St. Helen were measuring everything from the volcano's emissions, ground temperature, and bulge movement, Landsberg's intuition proved to be even stronger than their instruments, as he noted in his journal that the volcano felt, quote, right on the verge of something. His prediction would prove to be horribly accurate, as on May 18th, he saw the volcano erupting and realized that he was too close to the mountain to have any hope of escaping with his life. Realizing his doom, Langsberg chose to spend his final moments documenting the eruption, taking a roll of film's worth of pictures, such as this final one which shows a massive cloud of ash approaching over the horizon. Once the roll of film was spent, he removed it and placed it in a case in his backpack. He then laid his body on his backpack as he was buried in ash in order to protect the photographs he made in his final moments on Earth. 17 days later, his body was recovered under the layers of ash. Though it had cost him everything, his pictures survived the natural disaster and were featured in the January issue of National Geographic. So, why should you not Google this image? Well, companies like Google collect your personal data and sell it to third parties. So, by searching this photo, you could inadvertently be giving personal information to people online. Look, I know that's a stretch, but the evil forces who run this dimension often assign me bizarrely specific titles that are really hard to incorporate, and I'm trying my best, okay?
Number 2 on this list is the Wem Town Hall Demon. Back in 1995 in Shropshire, England, Wem Town Hall, an old building built in 1905, burned to the ground. Locals gathered and watched as the fire department tried to save the building, but alas, it was no use and it did eventually burn down. During the blaze, some of these bystanders took some photos of what was going on, and one of them, when it was later developed, started quite the controversy. As you can see in this picture, there's very clearly a girl standing behind some bars in the building. Now, before we go any further, I want to say that this isn't a living person in danger, because from my research, nobody actually got hurt in this fire. The thing is, though, that if this wasn't a living person, then who the heck is it? Well, the legend says that this apparition is that of a girl named Jane Churm. Jane Churm was a young girl who lived back in the 1600s but died in a tragic fire. This fire took place in the town of Wem, and it was actually said to be started by Jane herself. Now, back then in the 1600s, the fire was started by accident, but that might not have been the case for the one in 1995. Lots of people think that Jane actually started this fire and that the picture shows her ghost or a demonic version of her watching her work. It should also be noted that Dr. Vernon Harrison, an expert in photography, studied this photo and concluded that it was a genuine photograph. Pretty spooky stuff if you ask me. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Tulip Staircase Demon. This one is scary for a number of different reasons. Stephen Wagner says, Reverend Rolf Hardy, a retired clergyman from White Rock, British Columbia, took this now famous photograph in 1966. He intended merely to photograph the elegant spiral staircase known as the Tulip Staircase in the Queen's House section of the National Maritime Museum in Greenwich, England. Upon development, however, the photo revealed a shrouded figure climbing the stairs, seeming to hold the railing with both hands. Experts, including some from Kodak, who examined the original negative, concluded that it had not been tampered with. It's been said that unexplained figures have been seen on occasion in the vicinity of the staircase, and unexplained footsteps have also been heard. This photo isn't the only evidence of ghostly activity at the Queen's House either. The 400-year-old building is credited with several other apparitions and phantom footsteps even today. A few years ago, a gallery assistant was discussing a tea break with 2 colleagues when he saw one of the doors to the bridge room close by itself. At first, he thought it was one of the lecturers. Other ghostly incidents include the unexplained choral chanting of children, the figure of a pale woman frantically mopping blood at the bottom of the Tulip Staircase, slamming doors, and even tourists being pinched by unseen fingers. So very clearly this place is deeply haunted, guys. I think arguments can be made that there are ghosts, demons, maybe even creatures all chilling at this one spot. Whenever we capture a photograph like this, and it's literally of a place that already has a legend surrounding it, I think that really adds to its legitimacy. People had been saying for years that something was up here, and then there was finally some proof when this picture was taken. Also, the fact that it's been proven to be genuine makes it pretty hard to explain. Number 5 on this list is Greta Thunberg. Greta is a 19-year-old Swedish activist who is known for challenging world leaders to act faster and more appropriately to the ever-changing climate. She's been heralded by many as a young hero and has received many awards for just overall excellence in the short time that she's been alive. There may be a parallel universe out there though where Greta isn't living with us now. The Guardian says, could Greta Thunberg be a time traveler sent from the future to save humanity from the unfolding climate crisis? A bunch of Twitter users seem to think so after the photograph of a young Klondike gold miner bearing a striking resemblance to the Swedish activist was discovered this week. The now viral 1898 image of the 3 children operating a gold mine in Canada's Yukon Territory is part of a sprawling collection by the documentary photographer Eric Hegg. Near the end of the 19th century, the Swedish-American captured some of the most iconic images of people hoping to make their fortunes in the rugged north. One of the children looks eerily similar to the 16-year-old activist, famous for her Friday climate strikes in both the intensity of her stare and long braided hair. To those saying, how can she be in the past if she's from the future? Obviously, as a time traveler, she can travel to any time period. She obviously tried to go back 120 years, didn't work, and now she's here. Obviously, tweeted the writer Jack Strange. None of the children in the photograph are named, making it difficult to determine their identities. Only the date and location, Dominion Creek, are known. The image nonetheless captures the gritty reality many families faced as they searched frantically for gold. So the internet seems to think she's a time traveler, but I'm not as convinced. In my opinion, this photo could just as easily mean that there are parallel universes. Maybe, in a parallel universe, Greta was actually born in the 1800s as a gold miner. Maybe that happened in one universe, but we're living in the universe where Greta actually was born as a Swedish activist. Comment down below what you think this means, cause it could mean a lot, guys. Number 4 on this list is the TV. So this next photo was posted to BuzzFeed a while ago and shows something super strange happening. A phenomena that just does not make any sense and leads me to think that something could be going down here. As we can see in this photo, we have a lovely kitty taking a snooze. It's lying on some white and blue bed sheets in a pretty small room. The room is mainly white and has a red fan on the floor, and the door is open, showing that there's another white room beyond it. Everything is normal up to this point, until you look at the TV. On the TV, in the actual room, there is very clearly a black man turning and looking past to the camera. He looks like he could be in a car or on a boat or something like that. Then we look into the mirror on the left side, and that isn't what we see at all. Instead of a black man looking back, it's a white kid looking forward. Now, what's really interesting about this is the subtitles in the middle of the screen. I actually can't make out what they say, but they're both yellow and look to be in the same font. Also, when we look from image to image, it seems like the boy could be having a conversation with the man, which then leads me to believe that this is actually the same movie or show, but it's playing at a different time. Now, how is that possible? Well, I will answer that for you. It isn't. Maybe though, there's a parallel universe out there where the exact same thing is playing out, but the person who's watching this movie in that universe is just a little further ahead or behind. And maybe somehow, what they were doing bled over into our universe. It's obviously a stretch, but we're in uncharted territory here. Number 3 on this list is the dog driver. Alright guys, so this one is definitely a silly entry on the list for sure. Ever wondered what it would be like to live in a world where instead of people running it, it was actually dogs? Well, I guarantee you have. I mean, Hollywood basically makes a movie a year based on this premise alone. Well, it's all fine and dandy until we get down to the nitty-gritty of how that would actually look, and then it starts to get a little scary. This next photo is gonna show a dog literally driving a car. Let's pull that up. So obviously this was just a weird photo taken at the worst possible time where the dog happened to get his face there, but it looks really weird. Anyways, first thing about this, the person who's actually driving that car probably needs to rethink their driving habits. I love dogs just as much as the next guy, but you have to think that having your good boy in the front seat like that probably isn't the safest. Second, I am all for the premise of dogs running the world, like, that'd be pretty funny, but it's the human hands that get me. Like, we just get this weird dog-human split, which just makes me want to barf. Who knows though, maybe there is a literal parallel universe out there somewhere where this is exactly what it's like. I mean, if the multiverse is infinite, then there probably would be one out there where dogs and humans are just one creature. Number 2 on this list is the nuclear shadows. This is about as dark as we can get, guys. Here we have a picture that looks just like a shadow with a stain on the floor. That's not just anything though. Bygonely says, on August 6, 1945, the United States of America dropped an atomic bomb on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. And for some of the approximately 80,000 people who lost their lives, only a nuclear shadow remained. When the bomb detonated at 1,900 feet above the city center, the subsequent explosion caused temperatures of 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit to annihilate nearly everything within 1,600 feet of the bomb's blast zone. Almost anything and anyone within a mile was destroyed. The bomb's light and heat were so extreme that they bleached the city's exposed surfaces, except in places where an unsuspecting person shielded the building or sidewalk or bridge from the blast with their own body in their final moments alive. Those shadows, the ones that appear on the ground and on the buildings that were left standing, those are where those people were standing or sitting or just flat out existing when the bombs went off. In a second, they were gone. And literally the only evidence that they were ever even there at all was these shadows that remained. A horrifying indicator of what went down here and the overwhelming devastating power that comes from a weapon like this. Nukes have only ever been used on human beings twice, and even that is far too many times. Number 1 on this list is John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy was born in 1942 and died in 1994 by lethal injection. Another name that you may know this man as is the Killer Clown. The image that we have here is of him while he was only a few years old, holding what looks to be 2 guns. As a 3-year-old, this picture doesn't come off as super threatening, but when you consider that he would go on to kill 33 people, it becomes a lot darker. John had some sick sexual passions and had interest in young. He carried out his sick fantasies by luring people to his ranch using his personas as a fun clown for kids. He did this many times and ended up killing 33 separate individuals and countless more. This all happened primarily in the 70s, and he was only arrested in 1978. I was reading up on what he did a lot for this video, and sadly I can't really get into too much detail on here because YouTube wouldn't like that. Just know that he performed some horrible things, stuff that makes you cringe and makes you feel sick just reading about. That's ultimately what makes this photo of back when he was just a kid so creepy. Number 5 on this list is Lord Combermere, or maybe better put as the ghost of Lord Combermere. The picture that we're going to look at today depicts the ghostly silhouette of the late Lord Combermere sitting in his chair. Insider writes, amateur photographer Corbet allegedly set up her camera and took this hour-long exposure while the funeral of her brother-in-law, Lord Combermere, was taking place 4 miles from the home. Interestingly, the apparition that appears to be sitting in the deceased Lord Combermere's chair is suggested to be Lord Combermere himself. I think the scariest part about this photograph is the timing. The fact that this was apparently captured literally right when the funeral for this man was being held. It's very possible that his spirit could have still been in and around the area and wasn't quite ready to leave the world of the living yet. Ghost Story UK says, it's thought by some that during that time a servant might have come into the room and sat briefly in the chair, creating the transparent image. This idea was refuted by members of the household, all testifying that they were all attending Lord Combermere's funeral. Sir William Barrett, who investigated the case and reported on it in the Journal of the Society for Physical Research was not satisfied. Working on the theory that a manservant may have come in and seated himself in the chair, he took a test photograph and got a picture that was almost a duplicate of the Combermere photograph. The matter seemed ended, but as he told in his book On the Threshold of the Unseen in 1918, sometime later he received a letter from Lord Combermere's daughter-in-law about the photograph. She said that the face was always too indistinct to be quite convincing to me, though some of his children had no doubt at all of the identity. I may add, none of the manservants in the house closely resembled the figure and were all young men who were all attending the funeral. No one resembled him and everyone was out of the house when this photo was taken. For years the church and others have tried to explain this photograph, but they just simply can't. Maybe it was the ghost of Lord Combermere, or maybe it was a demon playing a trick on all of us. We may never know. Number 4 on this list is Freddie Jackson. In this photo, we're going to be looking at Sir Victor Goddard's Royal Air Force Squadron. This picture was taken in 1919 after World War I and showed a bunch of young strapping pilots. What's wild about this though is the unexpected visitor that we have in the back row. If we zoom into the top row and look at the man fourth from the left, we can see something over his right shoulder. An apparition of sorts that resembles a human face. After people started taking note of this and examined it, those who had worked with the squadron identified that face as Freddie Jackson. Freddie Jackson was a mechanic with this squadron for a while, but the crazy part is that he had died in a propeller accident several days earlier. Similarly to Lord Combermere, the day that this picture was taken was the day of his funeral. Maybe his ghost showed up because he was pissed all his friends were taking pictures and not paying their respects. But seriously though, how on earth do you explain a photo like that with tons of other people in it? It's impossible for it to have been staged, and it's clear that there's something there. Hopefully Freddie was able to find peace after his impromptu photo bomb. Number 3 on this list is the couple's demon. William Hope was a paranormal investigator who lived from 1863 to 1933. During that time, he was responsible for capturing a wide array of spiritual photographs which showcase ghosts and demons. Now, after evaluating some of his work, I think it's fair to assume that some of it is doctored. I'm not sure how one man would have been able to capture all the demonic pictures that he did without potentially faking a few. That being said though, I don't think that everything he's done has been doctored, and I imagine that there are some with serious legitimacy to them. One of his most famous is of an older couple with what clearly looks to be a demon standing behind them. When they took this photo, nobody was physically there, and they could only capture this devilish creature when they looked at the film after the fact. Some other entries on this list, I mean, you might be able to classify as a ghost, but this is 100% a demon. The eyes are black and unforgiving, and it looks as if you're getting sucked into a black hole of nothingness. You can't make out this creature's lower body at all, and she's just all black. She reminds me a lot of a few urban legends of female demons appearing around the world. Their stories differ, but there are some commonalities between them all. Usually a woman appears like this to a stranger, asks them a few questions, and if they don't answer properly, will drag them to hell. I'm actually surprised that the people in this photograph managed to get out of it safely without feeling her presence or being attacked while they were there. I'm pretty sure that the church can explain this one, they just probably won't like the explanation very much. Number 5 on this list is the cemetery baby demon. This photo clearly shows the apparition of a young child with jet black eyes floating over top of a gravestone. Stephen Wagner writes, "A woman named Mrs. Andrews was visiting the grave of her daughter in a cemetery in Queensland, Australia in 1946. Her daughter Joyce had died about a year earlier in 1945 at the age of 17. Mrs. Andrews saw nothing unusual when she took this photo of Joyce's grave marker. When the film was developed, Mrs. Andrews was astonished to see the image of a small child sitting happily at her daughter's grave. The ghost child seems to be aware of Mrs. Andrews since he or she is looking directly into the camera. Is it possibly a double exposure? Mrs. Andrews said there was no such children nearby when she took the photograph, and moreover didn't recognize the child at all. It was no one she would have taken a picture of. She remarked that she didn't believe it was the ghost of her daughter as a child." Investigating this case, Australian paranormal researcher Tony Healy visited the cemetery in the late 1990s. Near Joyce's grave, he found the graves of 2 infant girls. So Wagner brings up the possibility of double exposure there, and that's a really common explanation for what could cause such an image. image. A double exposure is a combination of two images into one where one image is overlaid onto another at less than full opacity. This is done with artistic intent unless you're shooting film and forgot to wind it in between shots, but still you might get a happy accident. So it's possible that double exposure could be at play here if she forgot to wind the film, but then she would have had to take a picture of a young girl who looked like this in the first place. She claimed that she never did that, and also even if she did, that still wouldn't explain the eyes. Jet black eyes and looking about as close as possessed as they can be, this child certainly has some demon characteristics. Number 4 on this list is the railroad demon. Wagner once again writes, "A strange legend surrounds a railroad crossing just south of San Antonio, Texas. The intersection of roadway and railroad tracks, so the story goes, was the site of a tragic accident in which several school-aged children were killed, but their ghosts linger at the spot and will push idled cars across the tracks even though the path is uphill." This story may be just the stuff of urban legend, but the accounts were intriguing enough that an article about the phenomenon, the haunted railroad crossing, was written. The article included a photograph submitted by Andy and Debbie Chesney. Their daughter and some of her friends had recently been to the crossing to test the legend, and she took some photographs. Inexplicably, a strange, transparent figure turned up in one of the photos. They had no idea that it was in the picture until the next day when I printed out the photo and showed them, said the Chesneys. It was really freaky. It appears to be a little girl carrying a teddy bear. Other readers who have viewed the photo think it shows a little girl with a dog sitting at her feet. Now, I don't like to classify demons as ghosts and ghosts as demons because they're certainly different. But even if what's going on here is due to a ghostly presence, then said ghostly presence certainly has demonic qualities. To be able to physically push a car and then also do it with the intention of killing those inside or killing those on the train, that's extremely evil, guys. I looked into the legend into San Antonio to see what had actually happened there, and it was really tragic. Back in the 1930s, a school bus full of children stalled on the tracks right before a train was scheduled to come. They raced to get off the bus, but not all of them made it, and 10 children lost their lives that day in the horrible accident. The more I looked into it though, the more I found that most people's experiences with these children have actually been good and not demon-like. That if you park your car on the tracks and leave it in neutral, they'll actually push it off the tracks to safety. All of this could be just one big hoax, but a picture like that goes a long way in validating the legend. Number 3 on this list is the backseat demon. Ever get the feeling when you're in a car that you aren't alone or somebody's watching you? Well, if you do, then you may have cause to be a little scared based on this photo. In 1959, a woman named Mabel Chinnery and her husband were visiting the grave of Mabel's mother. Whilst they were there, Mabel pulled out her camera and snapped a photo of her husband in the front seat of their car by himself. Except, when the film was developed, it's clear that he wasn't by himself. In the backseat of the car, you can see that there's some sort of humanoid creature right behind him. It's very dark and hard to make out, but apparently Mabel knew exactly what it was. To her, the being in the back looks identical to her mother, the person whose grave they were visiting that day. This picture was taken to an expert, and they concluded that it was not double exposure and the picture hadn't been tampered with. This has led most people to believe that the only real explanation for this photo is something supernatural.
Number 3. The final photo of Ferdinand. On the 28th of June, 1914, the heir presumptive to the Austrian-Hungarian throne, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, took a car ride with his wife, Sophie, the Duchess of Hohenberg. Little did they know the impact that this outing would have on the fate of the world, or that their lives were about to come to an end, an hour after this photograph was taken. While on their drive, the couple was attacked by a group of Bosnian Serb revolutionaries known as Young Bosnia, who hoped that by ending Ferdinand's life, they could free their country from Austria-Hungarian rule. While the motorcade progressed, one of the revolutionaries threw an explosive at the car, but it bounced off the car's convertible cover and instead blew up the car behind Ferdinand. Ferdinand and his wife made it to the speech that was being given by the town's mayor, showing signs of stress but relief that he had escaped unscathed. On the return journey, the driver made a wrong turn, and when he tried to reverse the car, the engine stalled. This gave the revolutionaries another chance, and one of them simply walked up to the motorcade motorcade and shot Ferdinand and his wife at point-blank range. This makes the final photo disturbing, but the photo takes on a new meaning when you consider what happened next. The death of the Archduke led to a series of diplomatic incidents among the countries in Europe called the July Crisis, which led to Austria-Hungary declaring war on Serbia. Due to international treaties and alliances, this resulted in many of the world's countries going to war in what would later be known as World War I. Over the course of World War I, over 20 million people died, including both soldiers and civilians. The tensions brought on by the eventual armistice was a leading cause of Germany's descent into fascism in the 1930s, which of course led to World War II, where an estimated 70 to 85 million people were killed. As if that weren't enough, the development of nuclear weapons during the war led the world into the Cold War, where the only thing stopping open conflict was the threat of mutually assured destruction. The death of Franz Ferdinand changed the world and led to the deaths of over 100 million people over the course of the rest of the century, making the final photo of him all the more haunting, as it is not just the last photo of him and his wife, but the last photo taken before the world changed forever, entering an age of bloodshed and global conflict. But why should you not Google this photo? Well, Google has a bit of a monopoly on the search engine market, and in order to preserve a free market, you should also use a different search engine from time to time. Perhaps something like DuckDuckGo or Bing will have the answers you seek. But let's be real, you're not going to use Bing. Number 2. An explosive family photo. Our next entry takes us to the town of Omagh in Northern Ireland during the Troubles, when a splinter group of the IRA, known as the Real Irish Republican Army, decided to use an explosive device to try and target a nearby courthouse. They sent a warning to the police about 40 minutes before the detonation, but as they were not specific about the location of the device, the police accidentally moved more people into danger in their attempts to keep people safe. The resulting explosion resulted in 29 deaths of people from various backgrounds and ages. Soon before the disaster, this photo was taken, showing a man with his carefree child on his shoulders. What makes this photo so disturbing is not just the fact that the pair are so unaware of the terror that is about to unfold, but for what else is pictured in the photograph. On the right of them is a red Vauxhall Cavalier. Not an uncommon sight, as this was a popular car at the time for people in the country, but little did they know, this was the car that was carrying the explosive that would soon detonate. It may, however, be a small comfort to know that though the photographer did not survive the incident, the man and child featured in it both lived. The Real IRA soon claimed that the attack was not meant to harm civilians and apologized for the incident and declared a ceasefire. That was of little comfort to the 29 people who died and the 220 that were injured. So, why shouldn't you Google this photo? Well, I've already shown it to you. You can pause this video to look at it and save yourself the time. Not exactly a dramatic reason, but you gotta admit, I have a point. Number 1. Flight 571. On October 13th, 1972, a private chartered flight carrying a rugby team called the Old Christians Union, as well as a few of their family members and supporters, left Uruguay, hoping to touch down in Chile. This photo was taken of the group showing them relaxed, happy, and excited. Unfortunately, the man flying the plane made a miscalculation and reduced his altitude too soon, causing the plane to crash in the Andes Mountains. Of the 45 passengers, 12 died on impact, and several more succumbed to the elements and their injuries soon afterwards. A search effort for survivors was mounted, but after 8 days of no luck, the group was presumed dead. The remaining passengers were trapped with little food to speak of. In order to survive, the group had to make a terrible choice. As one of the survivors later wrote in a book chronicling the events, our common goal was to survive, but what we lacked was food. We had long since run out of the meager pickings we'd found on the plane, and there was no vegetation or animal life to be found. After just a few days, we were feeling the sensation of our bodies consuming themselves just to remain alive. Before long, we would become too weak to recover from starvation. We knew the answer, but it was too terrible to contemplate. The bodies of our friends and teammates, preserved outside in the snow and ice, contained vital, life-giving protein that could help us to survive. But could we do it? For a long time, we agonized. I went out in the snow and prayed to God for guidance. Without his consent, I feel I would be violating the memories of my friends, and that I would be stealing their souls. We wondered whether we were going mad even to contemplate such a thing. Had we turned into brute savages, or was this the only sane thing to do? Truly, we were pushing the limits of our fear. The group was forced to survive on the bodies of their fellow passengers until 2 of the passengers were able to make the long hike into Chile and return with help. Looking at the photograph, it is hard to believe what horrors are awaiting the passengers of Flight 571 featured in the picture. Why shouldn't you Google this photo? Well, you've been inside a long time, and maybe you should spend some time outside. Go for a walk and perhaps see a friend, and ask them if they would be cool with you eating them in an extreme survival situation. Photographs can be deceiving. Though their subjects can appear joyful and full of life, there is no way to know what tragedies and horrors horrors are about to befall them.
Number 5 on this list is the farm demon. Most of the time we look at these photos and they're typically pretty old, captured 100 years ago and often chalked up as being a double exposure error or something like that. I don't think that can be said for the farm demon though. Stephen Wagner writes, "This amazing photo was taken by photographer and graphic designer Neil Sandbach in 2008. Neil was photographing some scenic shots at a farm in England as part of a project for wedding stationery. The couple planned to have their wedding ceremony held there later. Neil was astonished when he examined the digital photo on his computer. There, as if peeking around a corner at him, is a ghostly white, almost glowing figure of what looks like a child. Neil says he's quite sure that there was no one there at the time. There's further corroboration that this is a true ghost photo. Neil had shown the couple the anomalous photo, and before the wedding they asked the staff at the farm if they'd ever seen any spooky experiences there before. They didn't mention Neil's photo. Indeed, they admitted that the figure of a young boy dressed in white night clothes had been seen on several occasions around the barn. So it looks as if this barn is haunted by some type of demon child, and Neil just happened to get lucky enough and capture it on camera. I think what's really scary about this though is that they had no idea it was there while they were staying at the farm, meaning that this demon child would have been stalking Neil the whole time. And what's even crazier than that is that this couple literally continued with the wedding. Like, scenery and all that quaint stuff is important, but a demon child running around the grounds? That's definitely a no-go wedding spot for me. Number 4 on this list is the demon pilot. In 1987, Mrs. Sayer and some of her closest friends were visiting Fleet Air Arms Station at Yeovilton, Somerset in England. As is customary with places that have a bunch of airplanes, you gotta take a photo of you inside of one as if you're flying it. Mrs. Sayer hopped into a helicopter that had been out of commission for a while, and she got her friends to take a snap of her while she was in it. The picture that came out was not what Mrs. Sayer or any of her pals expected though. When they took a look at the photo a while later, they saw what is a very clear image of a pilot sitting next to her. Actually, claiming that it's a pilot is a bit of a stretch. In truth, it's just a figure with a white shirt on that looks like a man. What this thing's connection to Mrs. Sayer or to the helicopter is anyone's guess. Apparently, when that photo was being taken, even though Mrs. Sayer had a bright smile on her face, she wasn't feeling so hot. In fact, she was feeling rather scared and anxious. She had no idea why at the time, and it was a passing feeling that went away after a few minutes, but just an overwhelming feeling of anxiety while she was there. To this day, nobody knows what this apparition is, what it's doing there, or what could have caused it to appear. Number 3 on this list is the Pink Lady. In Greencastle, Indiana, there's a massive mansion called the O'Hara Mansion. The pictures in question are by a man named Guy Winters who was investigating said mansion several years ago. This mansion is abandoned and has been for some time, and the locals like to keep it that way. Apparently, they have believed for quite some time that some sort of demonic entity lives there and watches over the grounds. It's thought that trespassing on them could endanger your life. This didn't deter Guy Winters and his friend Terry, who wanted to find out for themselves if there really was some sort of evil presence here. They went into the mansion and stayed there for several days and nights with cameras documenting everything. What they found was the Pink Lady, a vaporous pink demon that Guy Winters was able to snap on photograph. Apparently, as is with most of this demon photography, Guy didn't actually see the apparition in real life, but it was only noticed after the picture was developed. This apparition definitely looks like something evil if you ask me. It almost looks like a demon witch, if that's even a thing, but certainly something that has the intention of possessing you or consuming your soul. This picture went along with a bunch of weird occurrences at this place too. Apparently the two boys were perpetually on edge and kept having strange things happen to them. Things would move without them touching them, the temperature in the rooms would change drastically. They both talked about having a voice in their head that they weren't familiar with, something that had them starting to become convinced that they were losing their minds. They might not have known it at the time, but it seems like all of these things can be chalked up to the work of the Pink Lady. Number 2 on this list is the Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571. Let's take a look at this picture here. Everybody looks like they're having a good time, right? Well, the good times are not going to last in this one. They are currently on a flight from Uruguay to Chile in 1972. It's not a huge plane, has about 45 total people on board. Still though, pretty big for back in the early 70s. Anyways, all of these people are about to go through something terrible. The captain of the airplane ends up making a fatal error and the plane crashes into the Andes mountain range. Not all 45 people on board died from this crash though. 12 of them suffered fatal injuries and didn't pull through, but 33 of them were still alive and kicking. 33 people trapped in the Andes fighting to stay alive until rescuers would find them. Except, and this is the crazy part, rescuers weren't coming. The rescuers called off the search after 10 days. I know that it's gotta be really hard to find people deep in the mountains like that, but only 10 days? Are you kidding me? The 33 people left alive were left to their own devices and needed to find a way to stay alive, and the remaining survivors were forced to resort to cannibalism. After 2 months in the mountains, there were only 18 people left. Nando Paredo and Roberto Canessa were 2 of them. These 2 people took it upon themselves to go on a 10-day trek through the mountains to try and get help, and against all odds, they were actually successful, and they, along with the remaining 16 people, were rescued. Now look back on that picture knowing what you know now and thinking about what these people went through. Changes some things, doesn't it? Finally, number 1 on this list is John F. Kennedy. One of the biggest assassinations in human history was when John F. Kennedy was shot in Dallas, Texas. History of Yesterday says, after greeting the crowd, John F. Kennedy and Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy boarded an open convertible with Governor John Connally and his wife Nellie. This picture was taken while they were slowly driving through the streets of Dallas and waving to smiling Texans. But just moments later, at around 12:30 p.m., as the car was passing the Texas School Book Depository, gunshots filled the air. One shot fatally wounded John Kennedy in his head. He was pronounced dead at 1 p.m. Obviously, because this was the President of the United States, this was caught on video and photographed from everywhere. We can see in this photo pretty much the moment right before it happened. Kennedy is happy. He's smiling and appealing to the crowd. Little is he aware, though, that somebody is watching him from afar, waiting for their opportunity to strike. This assassination shocked the world, and it was heard about everywhere, and it's still talked about today. Conspiracy theories are always brought up about this incident just because of how crazy it was. Once again, this photo puts life in perspective and should make us all remember not to take anything for granted.
Number 5. A dying star. Stars live for hundreds of million years, but in the grand sense of things, in the big cosmic sense, that's kind of just an infancy. Stars live fast and die young. But what does a dying star look like? Thanks to billions of dollars of telescope technology, we can get some answers on a cosmic dying star. A few years ago, the Hubble Space Telescope captured some pretty good spooky vibes by snapping an image of the dying star CW Leonis. This is my first picture of a dying star, and I gotta say, it is as ethereally beautiful as I had expected. It looks like a cosmic cobweb, like a fractal galactic spiderweb. Oh, say that 5 times fast. Am I the only one who kind of gets like Lovecraft vibes out of this? This interstellar spiderweb looking star seems like the kind of thing a protagonist in a Lovecraft story would look into and then become aware of his insignificance and then gets driven to madness and collapses after viewing the true name of an old god. Sorry, I've been reading the Necronomicon before bed every night. Now, I'm not much of a scientist, I just look at pretty pictures of space and go, that looks cool. But it doesn't take rocket appliances to understand what's going on here. NASA did explain it easy enough for us laymen's. This star is called a carbon star. Cobwebs that are surrounding it are carbon absorbing the dying star. The outer layers of the star are being sucked into the black void of space. Where that goes, absolutely no idea. Like I said, I'm not much of a scientist. I can just look at a star and think it looks pretty cool. And it does. And if you're looking to see way more cool scary space content, well then you're in the right space already. Subscribe to the channel for new stuff every day, or click through our huge archive of scary content. Let's keep going. Number 4. Space Face. And the Hubble telescope seemed to have a real eye for finding bizarre, scary things up in the stars. I only picked 5 here, but there are so many more crazy things out of the Hubble telescope. It's worth looking at. But this is something else. I don't know how you could see something like this and ever want to look at the stars again. This probably would have convinced me of some sort of cosmic god staring back at me. All I can see looking at this looming specter of some incomprehensibly big galactic skull, it makes me feel like this is going to be the next big villain of one of the Avengers movies. So what actually is this, if not a looming sign of the apocalypse? Well, it's actually pretty fascinating. I mean, that goes without saying. It's 2 galaxies crashing into each other. Each of the skulls' glowing eyes are the bright cores of a galaxy as the two of them are collapsing in on one another. Cluster of blue stuff you see are all young little baby stars colliding into one another. Also, a side note, did you know galaxies could crash into each other? Because I definitely did not know that was a possibility until I started reading for this video. Did not know space was full of traffic accidents, and now I'm kind of stressed about it. Apparently though, it's a pretty rare occurrence. NASA and the ESA said that there's only a few hundred situations like this that live inside our larger cosmic neighborhood. The bad news, this beautiful cosmic coincidence won't last forever. We've only got about 2 billion more years or so, give or take, to appreciate this lovely phenomenon. So it's a good thing we got this photo while we did. We almost missed it. Photos will last longer.
Number 2 in this list is the glitch in the garden. That is actually what BuzzFeed is calling this next picture, and I think it's a pretty fitting name. In this next image, you are gonna think that you're seeing double. 2 old guys dressed exactly the same and looking like the exact same person. Now listen, folks, I understand. When you reach a certain age, your sense of fashion sort of goes out the window and you stop caring. You end up with a few different outfits and that's just gonna be that. But this is a bit extreme, I'd say. Am I meant to believe that 2 men who look exactly the same, who stand the same, who have the same cane, and are also dressed totally identically, happen to be in the same garden at the same time? All of that is really hard to believe. And it's really hard to believe because it didn't actually happen. Apparently the person who took this picture only took the picture of one person, her grandfather. There was only one man there when she took the photo, but 2 people showed up when she looked at it back. Maybe this is evidence of a parallel universe. One where the old man, her grandfather, is also at the garden that same day and is just slightly ahead or behind of her actual grandfather. Same sort of idea with the movie that we looked at, but even more extreme because it isn't through a mirror and it's with a whole human being. Just a time lapse where she caught her other grandfather in a slightly different position and it bled into our world. Comment down below if you've ever experienced anything like this before in your own personal life. And finally, number 1 on this list is the iceless planet. This is an image of a parallel universe that is sadly coming to pass sooner than we would hope. If parallel universes are truly real, then there would be a universe out there that has gone through what I'm about to show you and is living in it right now. We have the power to stop this universe from reaching us, but we may need to listen to our pal Greta a little bit more. Here is North America if all of the ice in the world melted. This universe is slowly becoming more of a reality for us every day that passes by. This is why this photo is probably the scariest on this list, because it's a universe that we're actually slowly creating for ourselves right now. As we can see in the photo, Montreal, San Fran, Miami, New York, Honolulu, these are just some of the big cities that are now completely underwater due to all of the ice melting. This will cause a chain reaction of horror that I don't think any of us can even begin to comprehend. Like, not only are tons of massive cities going to be totally underwater, but the effects this would have on the ecosystem and the economy, they'd be horrible. We just need to change a little bit quicker and stop this parallel universe from ever actually occurring.
Number 5. Blanche Monnier. This photo is one of the most harrowing things I've ever seen. I know it's kind of weird to start off so emotionally high and go down so fast, but that's just the nature of the top 5 games sometimes. This is Blanche Monnier, the daughter of Madame Monnier, the matriarch of the Monnier family, a wealthy high-class Parisian family from the 19th century. One fateful day in 1901, the Attorney General of Paris received a disturbing handwritten note suggesting that a prominent family was keeping a dark secret inside their manor. The note apparently chilled him so deeply, he sent police to the Monnier estate immediately, who initially didn't find anything wrong. In fact, they thought they got the wrong address. The family had a spotless reputation, with the only mark on the family's legacy being that their beautiful young daughter Blanche had vanished 20 years ago, and no one had seen her since. She was good-natured and beautiful, but had disappeared mysteriously, and the family had simply accepted that she'd passed and moved on. The police assumed there was nothing to search for, until while sweeping the upstairs, they discovered a padlocked room. Naturally, they were more than a bit curious when they weren't allowed in, so they broke the lock and discovered something reprehensible. Blanche Monnier was shackled to the bed, looking more like a living skeleton, covered in her own waste, rotting food, vermin, lice, and flies. The room was pitch black, and the stench was apparently so vile that a police officer broke the window open. When the officer broke the window, that was the first time Blanche had seen the sun in 25 years. Horrifyingly, Blanche was still lucid. She remarked how lovely it was to finally feel fresh air again. You see, when Blanche was younger, she had fallen in love with a lowly lawyer. Her mother had wanted her to marry someone rich and influential, and yet Blanche had her heart chosen. Her mother, enraged by her daughter's disobedience, punished her by locking her in the attic for 20 years naked and shackled to a bed. Pretty normal response. Blanche suffered extreme psychological damage from the event, understandably, and spent the rest of her days in a French sanitarium. Her mother would pass away from a heart attack 15 days after Blanche's freedom, avoiding justice. Today, no one knows who wrote the note to the Attorney General. Some have suggested it could have been a servant, or even Blanche's brother, wrought with guilt. And if you're enjoying scary stories and horrifying photos, we've got loads and loads and loads of them all up on the channel. So toss a subscribe our way and stay with Top 5 Scary all day long. Number 4. The Lost John Franklin Expedition. Now this looks almost like a bit of a bad rubber Halloween mask at first. It almost kind of looks goofy in a disturbing way. Well, unfortunately this is not a mask, but is the body of a frozen sailor some 100 years after being frozen. The Franklin Expedition was led by one John Franklin, who was an experienced sailor in his own right, with several journeys through the Arctic under his belt. Unfortunately, his expedition in 1845 would be his last, now known as the doomed Lost Franklin Expedition. Franklin led 2 ships, the HMS Terror and the HMS Erebus. The ships disappeared a few months after setting sail, and it was years before the Navy sought them out. Eventually, after a long time searching, unmarked graves were found near where the ships should have been, containing the body of 3 crew members. They were exhumed, and the frozen tundra had left them almost perfectly preserved, although they were a bit warped after a lot of time under the ice. Scientists discovered lethal amounts of poison in the one sailor's body, the one you saw the photo of, which they suspect came from poorly tinned rations, and suspected that this possibly could have affected the entire crew. Worse than the bodies were the piles of bones and remains discovered that were thought to be former property of the crew. The bones found had been damaged by knives and looked to have been boiled, leading the Navy to conclude that the crew must have resorted to cannibalism to survive. For 140 years, there'd be no real answers, until in 2014 in Canada when the HMS Erebus was found, and the HMS Terror was found 45 miles away 2 years later. The best hypothesis researchers had come up with was that the 2 ships found themselves completely trapped in the ice, and when they couldn't sail through and had run out of all of their resources, that poorly tinned rations that poisoned them all, the crew abandoned ships in the hopes of surviving. As we know from the recovered bones and bodies, it didn't work. With nothing but frozen wastelands surrounding them from all sides, the crew of the John Franklin Expedition were all but doomed to die alone, frozen, and far from home. Number 3. Karl Transler's mummy. In 1931, Dr. Karl Transler fell in love with one Maria Elena Milagro de Hoyos, who he was treating for tuberculosis. Transler was obsessed with Maria. Since he was a young boy, he had a vision of falling in love with a black-haired, beautiful woman. Transler showered Maria with gifts and affections during her treatments, and according to historical documentation, she didn't particularly reciprocate this affection whatsoever. The same year he met her, Maria would tragically fall to her illness. But Transler's love transpired beyond the grave. He paid for her funeral and built her a mausoleum to forever keep her body in. Unfortunately, he would not keep her. Number 3. Spiders on Mars. Now, not to burst anyone's cosmic bubble, but sadly, what we're looking at right now are not proof of alien life on Mars. It's not Attack of the Giant Arachnids taking over the Red Planet, as cool as that would be. They just look exactly like their horrifying monstrosities from beyond the stars. I'm not really great with spiders as is, let alone when they're not from this planet. So what are we looking at then? Well, what we're looking at right now is called an areniform. Areniform is a fancy science word that means spider-like, and it mostly gets used when describing describing this particular phenomena viewed from the surface of Mars. So basically what these are little channels, and these grooves converge at a point together and give off the sort of optical illusion of spiders crawling the surface of Mars. And this is far from the only time telescopes have shown us something weird looking at the surface of Mars, and there's a lot of things up there like that one rock that looked exactly like a human face, or those rocks that look like bones. But this repeated phenomena sure makes for some interesting photos. It makes me want to get up there way faster. The question if there's life on Mars is one of the most compelling questions in the world right now, at least to me and David Bowie. I'm sure there's some form of bacterial life or some sort of prototype life on Mars right now, but I just really hope that it's not gigantic spiders. Number 2, The Darkness. One of my all-time favorite films is Ridley Scott's 1979 classic Alien. The first time I watched it, I was a little kid and I was terrified beyond words. And that was before the alien even shows up. I mean, you're already scared. If you've seen the movie, you know. The vibes are immaculate, all that darkness and spookiness up in space. And looking at these photos of the ISS at night look like photos straight out of the USCSS Nostromo behind the scenes. It's a look into the life of an astronaut we don't get to see too often or really think about. When you're up in space, night doesn't mean anything anymore. I mean, you've traveled outside the concept of there being a night and a day. The ISS orbits the Earth 16 times a day, meaning you're seeing the sunset 16 times a day. But we can't just expect astronauts to stay awake 100% of the time. So when the astronauts need to sleep, all the lights go out to simulate the effect of being nighttime, just like you do when you put a blanket over a bird's cage. And the effects are anything but soothing. An astronaut, Alexander Gerst, takes photos to stave off boredom while he's floating above the cosmos, and one instance, instead of drifting off to bed, he decided to take a series of photos showcasing what nightlife on the ISS looks like, and we thank him for it, because it's a harrowing reminder of how lonely and strange being an astronaut must be. I gotta wonder, is it easy to get to sleep like that? And finally, at number 1, cracked glass. It has got to be so odd, being on the ISS, being out in the vast, unending cosmos, getting to see a perspective that people almost never get to see, and also knowing that the only thing keeping you alive is being inside this station and that the environment around you literally can't support your life and you're lost in a sea of stars. The ESA, European Space Agency, tweeted a photo out a little bit ago of a crack in the window of the ISS. A bit of a disconcerting sight. The damage was caused by a floating piece of debris that collided into the observatory of the ISS. Luckily, the chip was only about a quarter of an inch, and while it looks incredibly unnerving, and if I saw that on the station, I would probably be sweating my hair out, the ESA reassures everyone that the damage does not pose a threat. Now, the unnerving part is that they speculate that the object that damaged the window could have been something as small as a flake of paint that came off of the ISS and collided with the window. A flake of paint. If your first thought was, well, what about something ever so slightly larger? The ESA has the same worry, and it said that a piece of debris larger than 4 inches would be enough to completely shatter a satellite or a spacecraft wide open. That would probably prevent me from ever getting a good sleep again, knowing that there's always a possibility something teeny tiny could tear a hole open and have us all sucked into space. Sweet dreams! The threat of space debris is a growing concern for NASA and the ESA and other space organizations, as debris keeps getting lost up there and isn't getting taken away. We've already messed Earth up pretty bad, so it would be a galactic embarrassment if we also trash up the stars. Might need to get someone up there to sweep up a little bit.
Number 5 on this list is the Shuttle Challenger. This is one that you've probably heard of before, and it was a tragedy that shocked the world when it happened. History of Yesterday says this photograph was supposed to represent a proud moment for the crew chosen to board the Space Shuttle Challenger. The aim of the mission was to launch the TDRS-B satellite, the second satellite for tracking and data relay. But it was not to be. Tragically, at 11:39 a.m., only 73 seconds after taking off from the Kennedy Space Center Launch Complex 39, the Challenger exploded over the Atlantic Ocean, killing every single person on board. To make matters worse, the families of the crew members who gathered to support it saw it all. And so did the shocked media and eventually the entire world. This mission was cursed from the start and was never able to even break out of Earth's orbit before falling all the way back down into the Atlantic Ocean. Wikipedia explains why this disaster happened by saying the disaster was caused by the failure of the two redundant O-ring seals in a joint in the space shuttle's right solid rocket booster. The record low temperatures of the launch reduced the elasticity of the rubber O-rings, reducing their ability to seal the joints. The broken seals caused a breach into the joint shortly after liftoff, which allowed pressurized gas from within the SRB to leak and burn through the wall to the adjacent external fuel tank. This led to the separation of the right-hand SRB's aft attachment, which caused it to crash into the external tank, which caused a structural failure of the external tank and an explosion. Now, that's a lot of astronaut speak that I'm sure a lot of us don't really understand, but basically something that needed to work didn't work and the whole shuttle went up. Now we're just left with this chilling photograph of all of the astronauts looking excited to take their trip to space, not knowing what's waiting just a little bit down the road. Hopefully a space tragedy like this never happens again in the future. Number 4 on this list is Darsh Patel. Bears are very scary and dangerous, and sadly Darsh Patel learned that the hard way. History of Yesterday says, on September 21st, 2014, a group of friends went for a hike in the Apshwa Preserve in West Milford, New Jersey. Among them was 22-year-old Darsh Patel, a Rutgers University student. While wandering through the woods, the hikers came across a 300-pound male black bear. The animal was 100 feet away from the group when Patel took several photos of it. But when the bear started walking towards them, the friends decided to separate to confuse the animal. However, the bear followed Patel and eventually caught up with him. Patel was attacked and mauled to death. The West Milford police later recovered the student's phone, and this was one of the photographs on it. Even the phone was covered in bite marks. Darsh Patel was the first person killed by a bear in New Jersey. Bears are dangerous, and if it's you one-on-one versus a bear, then the likelihood that you win that fight really isn't good. Darsh ever so sadly lost his fight against the four-legged beast. Ultimately, this photo is so terrifying because we know what's coming, but it also makes you stop and wonder about every time you're going for a hike, and every time you hear a little rustle in the woods. Could that be a bear? A wolf? Some other type of creature that's looking to do you harm? And if it is one of those creatures, how are you going to get away? If one of those things decides to stalk you as they did with Darsh, then you could be in some serious hot water. Be very careful around bears and other wildlife, guys. You never know what's going on inside their head. Number 3 on this list is the car bomb. This is a horrible incident and one that really just puts life in perspective. As we can see in this photograph right here, we have a man holding a girl on his shoulders. They look happy and joyful, really not a care in the world. Well, in the red car, the one that's directly next to them, in the trunk of that car there is a 500-pound bomb waiting to go off. History of Yesterday says, on August 15th, 1998, a 500-pound bomb placed in the boot of a red Vauxhall Cavalier on a street in Omagh caused the deadliest incident in Northern Ireland in 30 years. The bomb was planted by the Real Irish Republican Army, a group that tried to unite Ireland. The explosion killed 29 people, including unborn twins, and injured 220. The fatality is remembered as the Omagh bombing. The only good news? Miraculously, the man, Gonzalo Cavedo, and the child on his shoulders next to the car bomb both survived. At the very least, the people that we're looking at right now managed to live, but for a lot of the people in the background, the incident didn't go as well. I think that this picture, similar to the one of Darsh, really makes you wonder. This one even more so though. Am I safe right now? Look around you, is there anything that could be unsafe? These people were just on the street taking a nice photo with absolutely no knowledge that they were standing right next to a device that is made to kill. Have we ever done that before? Have you or I unknowingly walked past a bomb like this and had no idea about it? I want to say that it's impossible, but in today's world, you never really know.
Number 2. Duchenne de Boulogne. Did you know smiles can be classified? That's right, I didn't know that before this video, so we both learned something today. Behavioral scientists suggest that there are 7 different kind of smiles. The most common is called the Cupid smile. That's the cute little, like, smiley face on the button we all know. The Pan Am smile refers to the fake sort of smile that airline attendants have to learn. And a Duchenne smile is one that features the eyes and is considered hard to fake. A Duchenne smile will raise the crow's feet around the eyes and is a joyous, happy thing, and is considered to be the most genuine of all smile classifications. Anyway, the Duchenne smile is considered to be the happiest one, so maybe it's a bit odd that it's named after a French scientist who used electroshock therapy to study facial expressions. Yeah, it sounds interesting, and then you start to see photos of the experiments, which all look like something out of a steampunk horror movie. Duchenne was fascinated by facial expressions and wanted to research the full intricacies of communication via facial expressions and body language. Duchenne believed that the face was the window to the soul, not the eyes. The photos of Duchenne's experiments feature him and lab assistants probing and shocking his test subjects to provoke facial expressions, and they all look pained, horrified, scared, and a lot more. Now, these photos look downright horrifying, but I'm pleased to tell you, the shocks themselves were not particularly painful in any way, and the subjects themselves were not harmed in any lasting way beyond a stinging sensation for a few seconds. Still, even with that knowledge, it doesn't stop us at gawking at these things that all look like they'd be something out of the world's most terrifying mental asylum. Duchenne's work, scary as it looks, was ultimately nothing but beneficial, as without him we wouldn't know half what we do about facial expressions and what muscles are used in the face where. So hey, maybe this one is kind of a cheat to include on a list of scary things, since it's not actually that scary when you realize what's going on. Number 1, Ed Gein's work. Okay, yep, no more smiles at all, because we're talking about Ed Gein. Ed Gein is one of the most infamous criminals in American history due to the horrifying, grisly nature of his crimes. Leatherface, Buffalo Bill, Norman Bates, all horrifying villains from horror movies, and all of them owe their inspiration to the real-life butcher of Plainfield, Ed Gein. What made Gein so unbelievably terrifying was his morbid habit of fashioning his victims' remains into trophies and household objects. Gein was very crafty. He made things like a belt out of human nipples, gloves and lampshades made of human skin, bowls made out of human skulls, and upsettingly, this is barely scratching the surface of everything police found when they raided Gein's house. Thankfully, there aren't as many photos of Gein's creativity available to save us the details and instead let us use our imagination. Gein explained to police that when captured, that his ultimate goal was to create an entire suit made out of human skin patched together like the world's most disgusting quilt. This was the plan of Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs, and a mask made of human skin and using the bones of victims to make into art and household objects was the MO of Leatherface, Bubba Sawyer from the Texas Chainsaw. Gein is thought to be responsible for at least 2 confirmed deaths, although the number is speculated to possibly be higher. He's known to have exhumed 9 bodies to gather materials for his disgusting arts and crafts. Gein lived in an isolated farmhouse with his brother and mother, who raised the boys to believe that women were vessels of evil to lead them to a life of sin. Gein's brother passed mysteriously, being found drowned in a nearby marsh. There's a great deal of speculation actually that Gein himself was involved, although never confirmed. His mother would pass not too long after, and Gein converted their home into a strange shrine of sorts for his late mother, blocking off rooms that she had stayed in and keeping them pristine. This is where the inspiration for the deranged Norman Bates comes from. While some rooms were kept clean, Gein left the rest of the house an unimaginable mess of debris and a horrifying collection of homemade furniture and clothing. Gein would spend the rest of his life in a mental asylum, deemed too insane to be tried.
Number 2 on this list is the White Lady of Worstead Church. Similarly to our Pink Lady that we mentioned earlier, we have another vaporous demon ghost thing resembling that of a woman. In 1975, Diane and Peter Berthelot visited the Worstead Church in North Norfolk. Peter snapped a pic of his wife praying on one of the church benches. They didn't think anything about the photo at the time, just a cute day at the church, but months later when they went to go get the film developed, one of their friends saw the photo and asked, "Who's that sitting behind you?" Behind Mrs. Berthelot is what looked to be the apparition of a woman wearing old clothes that were pretty much all white. This was obviously really spooky to the couple since they didn't remember anyone like that sitting behind her when they took the picture. They went back to Worstead Church the next summer and showed it to the Reverend. reverend. Apparently, this church for years now has been riddled by the spirit of the White Lady. It's said that this ghost demon is a healer who appears when someone near is in need of healing. When she visited the church at the time of the photo, Diane was in ill health and was taking antibiotics. Now, even though this ghost being is a healer, it can also curse you too. According to one story, on Christmas Eve in 1830, a man boasted a challenge to the White Lady. He said he would climb to the top of the church's belfry and kiss her if she would appear. So up he went. Hours went by and his friends got worried though. They went up to go search for him and they found him in the belfry, cowering in a corner, terrified. "I've seen her," he told them. "I've seen her." And then he died. The demon or ghost or whatever it is clearly capable of totally stunning you out of sheer fright. I personally can't imagine the feeling of literally dying out of fear, but that's what happened here, and it proves that this ghost, if that is what it is, has demonic qualities to it. Now, this church has been turned into a pub, believe it or not, but this presence still lingers. I'm all for getting a brew with the lads, but not at the expense of getting totally shell-shocked like that. Number 1 on this list is the Coventry Demon. Stephen Wagner writes, on January 22nd, 1985, the Coventry Freeman organization were having a dinner event at St. Mary's Guildhall in Coventry, UK. Everyone in the group had her or his head bowed in prayer when this photo was taken, including a towering mysterious figure standing top left. The strange cowled specter appears to be wearing clothes much like a monk frock from another time. Lord Mayor Walter Brandish, who was present at the dinner, said that there was no one at the event who was dressed like that, and he could not explain the presence of the interloper in the photo. St. Mary's Guildhall dates back to the 14th century and served as a prison for Mary, Queen of Scots. So as you guys can see, this creature doesn't look like anything human. I know that it resembles something like a monk, as Wagner was saying, but I also think that there's an argument that could be made that it resembles something from the underworld as well. The robes that it's wearing, coupled with the shape of its body, also coupled with the fact that no one actually saw this thing in person at all, kind of leads me to think that there must be something demonic about it. Also, the face doesn't look human at all. It's all black and those eyes don't look like human eyes. I have no idea why a demonic monk-looking creature would show up at this dinner event, but I also don't have any other explanation for why this thing popped up in the photo to begin with. Toss a comment down below if you have any theories on what this thing is or what it could be doing there in the first place.